to his feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland front of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. We got a late night edition of the podcast here as the Boston Celtics took a 2-1 lead over the Cavs in this series, taking home court back, and the Cavs lost at home for the first time in the playoffs. I thought it was a pretty fun game. Cavs crowd absolutely showed out. It was loud as hell on there. But sometimes, shots don't fall, and Jason Tatum can do superstar things. Joining me today, always giving us a superstar performance, is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It was interesting, this game for me, because it was the first game of the postseason I've covered that wasn't like, total ecstasy or total misery. Because obviously I missed, I guess you probably were pretty miserable after game 6, but I missed that very close loss, the two other losses in that Orlando series in game 1 were like, well, either furious or, man, just feels defeated, This one I felt was a much more even game, a more 50-50 game throughout. I thought the Cavs did a lot of things that I think they should feel good hanging their hat on. I think they also, they failed to execute at some key times, both in terms of the mentality they needed to attack with, as well as doing the thing where you make the ball go into the basket. And so, those are a little bittersweet, but, I liked the fight. I liked the effort. I liked the get back.
Yeah, and I thought to start the game, the intensity was where it needed to be. You could tell both teams were a little kind of jacked up by how loud it was there. Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is one of the best environments in the NBA. Richard Jefferson giving them a shout out on the crowd. And also, I was happy to see that RJ got a shout out on Humongotron as well. But there was quite a few turnovers there, right? A few too many unforced errors. And for the Cavs, who actually got off to a pretty good start when they weren't turning the ball over, it was disappointing to kind of leave some of those points on the table, right? Because that's one of those spots where you'd like to be building a bit of a cushion so that when Boston makes their push a little later in the game, because they're going to do that, instead of being up 9, it's, they got up, 1 or 2 points. It's still a one possession game. We're still kind of in control. It makes everything feel a little bit better, and then you can ride the momentum of the crowd. So a few missed opportunities there. I did think that they settled down pretty well after the first quarter. I think they had 6 or 7 turnovers in the first quarter and ended up with just 8 for the game. So, much better job of taking care of the basketball. But, outside of that, obviously, another fantastic performance out of Donovan Mitchell. Just incredible shot making. We always talk about what's the process like and what are the corresponding results. I felt like the Cavs were generating pretty good open looks throughout the night. The only guy that wasn't really getting the cleanest of looks was Donovan.
Yeah, and he was the only one who made them.
Yeah, he was making them. So you know what? Sometimes you got to throw the process out of the window and, just tip your cap to a incredibly talented shot maker.
It's funny you kind of mentioned that the Cavs, the Cavs kind of got their heads right after that first quarter in terms of the turnovers. Unfortunately, the shot making is what abandoned them latter third of the, three quarters of the game. They score 28 in the first, and they don't get past 25 the rest of the game. And, it's weird for a game that felt as violent in its swings as that did. Yet Boston wins first quarter by 2, second quarter by 7, third quarter by 6, and loses the fourth quarter by 2. This wasn't one of these games where the Cavs have had in this postseason where, they lost the quarter 32-17. I don't think you really. I don't think you can really fault their willingness to stick in this game. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. On one hand, I really, I really obviously super pleased with Donovan, and the way he was attacking. But I do think they kind of did that thing where they forgot how to run offense after that,
Yep.
Especially
a little too
like
much watching. A little too much watching for sure.
And you know what? I also think it's probably fair to say a little bit of going for the knockout blow. You're on that run to start the fourth, and Donovan goes in and forces a 1-on-3 layup. And then Karras has a 0 pass possession where he tries to attack Al Horford. And it's like, whoa, guys. Like, like that process wasn't. You found the process in fits and starts, but where did it go?
Yeah, see, I think that's one of those examples where, what you do earlier in the game pays dividends, because talked about, if you limit those turnovers early and you give yourself a bit of a cushion, you stay more connected, you're still in that game. I think because of the run Boston, at the start of the third, that's what really kind of put it out of reach. Cavs got it back underneath 10 to start the fourth, as you mentioned. But at that point, you've used so much energy to claw back from, 20 down to 9. And when you're tired, you've used up a bunch of energy, you've played a bunch of minutes, you're Donovan, you put the team on your back the whole time. Sometimes it's tempting to kind of settle for those knockout shots, right? Like, all right, God, like, if I can just hit this shot and get it to 6, all of a sudden it feels so much better. So I understand that. You're correct in that you'd like to, continue to run the offense, continue to, get everybody involved and get better quality looks. But, that's part of basketball where when you've already used up so much energy, that's finite. You're going to take some, I don't even want to call them lazier shots, but you're going to take a few more hopeful shots than you would otherwise.
I just think Boston's personnel is too good for those. I think this is one of those series where you just have to outthink them. You have to out execute them. You have to be at your best and hope they're not at theirs. Which is what I said going into the series. And this is a game where I thought for prolonged stretches the Cavs process was pretty good, but that's where the talent gap comes in. And then also I think the rim battle was really interesting in this game. The Cavs have just been feasting at the rim. They go like, I want to say it was 18 of 33 at the rim, and Boston just feasted. They shot 60% from 2-point range. And like I felt like
Holiday was a killer, man.
This was a vintage Drew game, let me tell you. I mean, he only ended up with three second half points, but on both ends of the floor, he was an absolute menace. I thought they did a better job protecting the rim on their end, with like gang size. Like, yeah, maybe Jason Tatum isn't an elite rim protector by himself, but Tatum and then White crashing in and then Brown crashing in and putting 3 on the ball down low, and basically telling the Cavs like, well, you're gonna have to kick it out and you're gonna have to make a 3. And Cavs weren't able to do that a lot tonight. So, like, I thought they did.
It just goes to show you how damn good they are,
yeah,
right?
They have options, man.
They have so many options, right? Like Derek White can kind of come back to earth and have a 4-13 game, and it's like, okay, well, you know what? The microscope isn't even on you because Drew Holiday stepped up, Jalen, Tatum's obviously hitting. Whereas if Garland goes 6 of 15 like he did tonight, you feel that, right? Like, oh, your 3-point shooting regress. I'm going to take a little bit of blame there. I pointed out that he was the only one that was shooting better than the regular season percentage on the last podcast, so of course that normalized, but both he and Derek White had their 3-point shooting normalized a little bit tonight, and unfortunately that was a whole lot more costly for the Cavs. But it is disappointing though when Isaac played so well in Boston, Max played well in Boston. Typically you say, okay, role players play better at home, and both of them kind of had cold games, right? Like neither of them was effective. And I thought because Isaac was struggling offensively and it wasn't as easy to keep him on the court, the Cavs perimeter defense suffered as a result of that. And the best perimeter defense that I think they played all night was that stretch when Evan Mobley was out with the ankle injury and Dean was there at the 5. And I think it's because they understood that there was no Mobley back there, but they were just asking entirely too much of Evan Mobley to clean up things, I thought, throughout the game.
Yeah, I thought Boston got a heck of a lot better of attacking their mismatches and playing downhill in this game. Not as much side to side. And really, I mean, you just have to give a lot of credit to Tatum and Brown, who just played with such, frankly, like nastiness in this game. And, by running pick and rolls and they got favorable switches, and then they mashed those switches in ways that either Mobley couldn't get back to help, or worst case, there were times where Mobley had to get switched on to Tatum as the primary. And like, that's just death. That's death because you're in that fourth quarter stretch. You get it within 9, and I saw this image is going to be seared into my brain, Justin. Of Mobley is out beyond the 3-point line, guarding Jason Tatum at the top of the arc, and along the baseline are Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Sam Merrill. There's your back line, and I think that is so the. I think that's so the downside to Okoro kind of having this nightmare outing where he goes 0-4 from 3 and JB kind of just doesn't play him much in the second half, where all of a sudden you're small with him and Strus at the 3 and the 4, but you're at least really tough and handsy, and you're going to at least bother these isolation scorers for Boston who, are playing a little smaller on the perimeter with Tatum at the 4. So it's like, okay, but now you're really small and you're not even, and you lose the grit, and like now it's a layup line. And in a lot of ways, I think it could have been worse. Al Horford goes 0 of 6 from 3, and I think all 6 were pretty wide open. And
he got good looks. He definitely got good looks.
So I would hesitate if I'm the Cavs. 106 against the Celtics, and your shot making let you down. So I get why you could be like, hey, yeah, our process was fine. I just don't think their personnel can do any better than what they did with the lineups they were running. And we'll get to the Dean Wade being back front, but I thought he looked really pretty strong in his minutes. Yeah. Only Cavs player that was positive other than Sam Merrill, and interestingly enough. And
the only negative moment that I noticed for Dean was when he tried to take a charge where Jalen just was not at all going to be in position to drive into him. Yeah. Jalen had so much time to see that he was lining up for the charge, and he just kind of walked around.
Yeah, that was weird. That's a timing thing. But yeah, so I just think especially if we're not going to see Jarrett back for game 4, which I'm just going to keep assuming he's not, and be pleasantly surprised if he is.
I'm going to do the opposite and will it into existence.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. But you just can't lose any ounce of toughness at the point of attack. So I don't know. I will say that I was a little disappointed to go away from Okoro. I am sure Dean was on some sort of minutes restriction, though I haven't seen any of that reported. But I just think you got to be bigger and tougher if you're going to have only one big on the floor, because if Boston's going to kill you at the rim, I just don't see how you can win the series.
Yeah, and it's tough too, because in the first half, I definitely would have said I'd like to see more Isaac out there instead of Karras. Karras is playing a little bit out of control, but then Karras had a pretty decent second half, right? So that's the tough conundrum that you're always in, right? As fans, it's so much easier to say, oh, someone's struggling, pull them, bench them for the rest of the game, where you really do have to kind of give trust to those guys and allow them the opportunity to play through it. And Karras possession by possession, it could be totally different, right? But I agree with you. I would have liked to see more of Okoro, even just his ability to get around screens and kind of lessen the need to switch as much as you are. Because the one change in Boston's offensive approach, I thought, tonight compared to games 1 and 2 was they were really trying to hunt Donovan.
Yep.
And I don't know,
Cavs gave up a lot of those switches because you didn't have Isaac out there.
Right. And I think, you can help prevent that from occurring as frequently. And I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, Donovan's a bad defender or anything like that. Obviously, he is somewhat limited with his mobility. But part of it, too, is, hey, if we can get a longer player onto Donovan and make him work defensively, we can wear him down, and that's going to make him less effective on the offensive end, right? Like that's part of the mentality that goes into it as well when it comes to basketball, right? So
here's a weird take.
They were really going after him a bunch.
Can I toss out a weird take? I think it's also... You're going to get an easier switch with him than on Darius. Like Darius, they're working really, really hard and therefore making you work very hard to not give that switch with these, hard shows and recovers and, just spamming that over and over again. It's a killer. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. And Donovan, I felt like Tatum and Brown he just took the switch, especially because it was okay, well, Sam Merrill's on the ball or Karis LeVert's on the ball, and we don't want to yield an advantage by showing and recovering when a switch isn't that big of a downgrade. Whereas with Ice or Strus on the ball, I do think that that's still that's more advantageous. So I don't know, man. I just think ultimately, and I know we're saying Okoro. We would have liked to see more Okoro, but they scored 93 points and were minus 17 in his 18 minutes on the floor, where he had 2 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. And it's
someone must have snuck a second big on the court. That's the only explanation.
Well, I guess I would just say, I would just say that Okoro just has to play better in his shifts, and he'll get more run.
Just across the board,
Yeah, when he plays well, he gets run, and JB doesn't have to make these hard concessions right now. And that's what sucks so much about Jarrett not being available and Dean, just working his way back is right now you have to make a lot of concessions with depending on that sort of stuff. If Okoro's out there, you can say, hey, Mobley, go guard Tatum. And actually, we're fine with that. No problem. We've got someone hanging out at the rim already. But you don't get to do that. So when you take your best point of attack defender off the floor, it's just this big kind of spillover. So I guess I would say I think the Cavs lost this game on offense because they just couldn't score enough. They didn't make enough of their open shots. But again, I would worry about taking anything more off the floor defensively for this group, because I think in some ways they got off a little bit easy with a 106 point outing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I definitely felt like they hung around well. The nice thing so far is, even with game 1 kind of getting out of hand, I feel like the Cavs look like they belong with 100%, the Celtics, right?
100%.
And that's what's going to make a night like tonight frustrating, where it's man, there's a path. You don't have to squint that hard. You don't have to, make some big leaps in logic to say how the Cavs would have won this game. It's, you just need to get better performances out of a lot of guys. But, while we're talking about who needs to play better, there is one strong performer tonight that I think we do need to acknowledge, and that is, of course, Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects.
That caught me off guard, buddy. Well done.
Thank you. I didn't get a smirk out of you, though. I'm always looking for your reaction, so that was a little disappointing. While we're talking about guys that need to perform better, I do think we need to talk about Darius, because anytime we're talking about needing to get more out of the offense, I think it's fair to put a lot of that on him.
Especially when you watch the first 2 minutes of the fourth quarter and you go, do that.
Yep. Yes, and I will get to that, because I do want to talk about his fourth quarter here. But, as, the Cavs' most talented playmaker, as, one of the main drivers of their offense, anytime that they come up short on that end, I think it's fair to, look his way and say, okay, what have you done? And I thought, 2 turnovers in this game. The first one I thought was definitely on Isaac. Isaac got both hands on the ball, but just kind of fumbled it out of bounds. But then the second one to Tatum was just awful. It was one of those kind of drives and leaving his feet that we had been giving him compliments that he had avoided doing through the first 2 games. But outside of that, I thought the 3-point looks that he took were mostly good. He probably passed up a couple that he could have had, but they just need more out of Darius. And, it's frustrating because I thought tonight was more shooting poorly versus playing poorly, but the aggressiveness does need to come up.
Yeah. Again, I just think when he is playing decisively, it just kind of changes the shape of the game, and changes the shape of how this Celtics defense looks. Like a lot of Donnie's buckets in this game, and again, he was just so phenomenal. But a lot of those were like, I'm gonna generate a switch against Al Horford, and I'm gonna hit a pull up three, low in and out step back 3, or I'm going to attack once he tries to close the gap. Darius, I feel like, is the guy who, when he's pushing in transition, when he's playing right and playing that decisive game, I just think everything kind of starts to feel like it within an ecosystem. He is a true point guard. And so the fact that we had, more stretches of kind of aimless play, especially with Donovan on the bench, it's like they just have to figure out a way to get past it. And and he's got to demand more touches. He's got to earn more touches by playing the way he played to start the fourth. I was disappointed, by the way, after the start of the fourth, how little he was involved from that point on. I think it was part of the reason why the game slipped back away out of reach.
There were a few times where he was waving his arms and just didn't get the ball.
Yeah, to
his credit, yeah.
Which, like, I don't, I think I hope that kind of stuff gets brought up, on the flight, or not on the flight, but in the post game. We're staying in Cleveland. But yeah, I just think there's a little bit of like, I don't know what the road is, but like what we saw in the fourth is kind of just what we need to see, to start the fourth at least, in terms of that decisiveness. And he even smoked a layup in that stretch, but it didn't matter because he had yielded such an advantage that Evan was able to clean it up and get a bucket.
He was getting downhill. He was on ball, and I think I'm glad that you said, I don't know exactly where to, put the responsibility, because in these type of situations, I don't think it's ever on one person. Like, I think he needs to be more aggressive. As you said, he needs to both demand touches and do more with his possessions to justify those touches as well. But, to start the fourth, when he was on ball, getting downhill, generating good looks, I think the same thing actually happened to start the second as well, where Donovan was on the bike, he was on ball, scored, created for Mobley. It was like 3-4 possessions in a row where they kind of got a good look. I was sitting there, I was like, man, like, why isn't this occurring as often? Like, it feels like he hasn't been on ball as much, and it made me look up kind of the possession data to see what's going on. And in the regular season, Darius averages 75 touches per game. 31 of those are initiated in the front court. So, his first touch on a given possession occurs over the half court line rather than, just bringing the ball up. In the playoffs, he is getting 14 fewer touches per game, only 23 in the front court, and he's actually fifth on the Cavs in front court touches per game. And, as you said, he's going to need to be more aggressive in demanding the ball. He's going to need to do more to justify it. But when we talk about, Mobley being more aggressive and doing more with his touches, we talk about how, from a coaching staff standpoint, you have to draw up some plays to when you kind of get the sense that, hey, he hasn't been involved in a while. You have to prioritize that. I think the same thing is true with Darius, who is functionally playing as a shooting guard in the playoffs. Like, he is playing primarily off ball unless Donovan isn't there. And I feel like he's at his best when the ball is in his hands. And if he's only getting 23 touches in the front court, like, there's only so much production that can come from those possessions. Like, I think he needs more touches on ball, even if it's just to kind of spell Donovan a little bit more. Like, I look at the Knicks series last year and the possession data there, it was a more even split. Like, he obviously got the majority of the lion's share of the touches in the regular season, and come playoffs, all right, it's dueling banjos. Him and Donovan are getting kind of an equal number of touches. I believe it's 29 per game in the front court. The number dropping as much as it has, I think that is leading to him being a little less comfortable, because even from a rhythm standpoint, if you're going prolonged stretches where you're not getting the ball in the hands, it's going to make you a little less decisive. It's going to make you a little less comfortable. And I think that would be something that I would like to see change heading into game 4.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen some possessions. Again, I called out that, the no pass possessions from LeVert, which he had a few tonight. I did not think this was LeVert's best game, by the way. I know the second half normalized a little bit, but I didn't feel like the decision making was as strong. Only one assist, which kind of is a good bellwether for him on how well he's getting off the ball. But yeah, to the Darius front, like, I don't know. On one hand, like, yeah, there's some mechanical stuff where it's like, hey, Karras, don't do the no pass possession, and you can point to that on film and say that's just not going to play for us in the series. I just do also think, like, Darius needs to earn the touches. He needs to go out and demand them. And when he is the only guard on the floor, the offense can't fall off a cliff. He can't do the probing stuff. He needs to just go be decisive and attack. Even if it doesn't go great, he needs to be the tone setter for them. So I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B on this front, where it's like Darius has to play better if he wants to get a ton of touches. And also the team needs him to play more impactfully and aggressively. So they should be trying to find as many ways as they can to generate that. They ran that really nice set in the first half for him where, he cuts off Mobley and gets a wide open layup, blows past Tatum. Off ball, and it's like, okay, there's a little off ball action for Darius that kind of loosened things up, got him playing downhill. I think there is a degree which the staff needs to find roads to get him that downhill play.
Yeah, and I don't even want to push back too much on what you said there, because I do want to see him be more aggressive with the touches he has, and justify getting those touches. But the other side of that, I'll at least bring up. As a point guard, that shouldn't really be part of the conversation, right? Like, when you're talking about just getting the ball in your hands, as a point guard, that is typically your role, right? Like, it's different than, a big man needs to show and be assertive, get in position to justify getting those touches. Sure. He shouldn't ever really be parked off ball to the extent that he has been. And, when Donovan is playing as well as he has, that... I understand Donovan getting even the majority of the touches. I just think it should be a little bit more of an even split, just to get him more comfortable, just to give Donovan a break as well, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you probably don't want, I'm going to guess if he's 5th in front court touches per game, I'm going to guess it's,
like Max is getting more.
Max, Donovan, is it Mobley and Allen?
Jared and Ev, yeah.
So, like, yeah, I mean, Max getting more touches in the front court is probably indicative of, a bit of column A, a bit of column B. I mean, yeah, especially in that round 1, Darius is getting jammed off ball every possession in a way Max is not, because no one's as worried if Max gets onto the ball. But still, I mean, I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves on that front. I have some rotation.
Here's the other thing. I just before we move off that point, he was 5th on the team in front court possessions in the regular season as well, but it was 31, right? So it was 31 dropping down to 23, and 75 total touches down to 61 in the playoffs, right? Like 75 touches, 75 possessions per game. So he's not bringing the ball up the court the same way, because as a point guard, there are a lot of possessions where Darius brings the ball up and is initiating basically the offense. That's not even occurring. So I think it's more the 14 possession drop off overall, rather than his ranking kind of within those front court touches. I just wanted to make that point.
I think that's fair. I want to talk about rotations a little bit, because I kind of went into this game kind of curious about what Missoula was really going to look to change going into game 3. And I thought that he would do things like, put Horford back on Mobley. He didn't do that. He still had him guarding Okoro for much of the game that they were together, or guarding anyone else out there, guarding Dean, etc. I thought that they would switch or come up to the level more. They did that a little bit more. I felt there was more switching than the deep drop. But the one thing I didn't kind of guess was that he was just going to say, we're playing 5.5 guys. Tatum, Horford, Holiday, White, and Brown play 42, 39, 38, 37, and 41 minutes. Hauser plays 10 minutes, I think all first half. I don't think he played almost at all in the second half until the very end. Pritchard plays 22, Cornet plays 8. Like, it was a complete trim down of the rotation. And like, that was something at the beginning of the season, I was like, can Boston really count on these guys at the end of their rotation? Can they really do that? Or are they going to need their top 5-6 guys to be great? And turns out tonight, like, even in a game where they were up double digits most of the second half, like, he still felt like he had to play those 5 heavy minutes, which I don't know how much that matters. I mean, Josh Hart's, coming up on 4 consecutive games of not subbing out, but like, especially with someone like Horford, who's pretty long in the tooth, maybe that bodes well for you that he had to pretty much cut every role player from the rotation in short order.
Yeah, I think it goes to show that they're taking this series seriously, right? Like, they felt that they needed to have their best players on the court all the time in order to maintain that lead. And, I think it's noteworthy when it's a deviation from how they normally approach things, right? Like, that wasn't the case when, they went 1-1 with Miami and Boston, right? Like, they just kind of understood, okay, that was a freak shooting night, whatever, and we'll just keep playing our game and just took control of the series from there. This is different, right? Like, it's all right. We need our stars on the court all the time. Tatum, phenomenal shooting night from him, played out of his mind. You knew that was going to happen at some point. But if they are sticking to a shorter rotation, you got to hope from the Cavs standpoint that from a role player standpoint, Okoro, Strus, all these guys start contributing more, and depth can become back into the Cavs' favor, right? Because if they are getting valuable contributions from a lot of guys, getting Dean Wade back, who makes such a big difference for this team, if you have a lot of options, you hope that you can kind of wear them down, right? And it sucks, we're back to kind of where things were at the start of the series, where Boston got home court back. But if you come out and you win Game 4 and you're extending this series, if they're sticking with the shortened rotation and there's no game with more than a day off between all of these games, you hope that it's just kind of body blows, that you can just hang around and make this as competitive as the series as possible. Because like we've said, when you are the underdog, you just want to stay connected. You want to wear the other team down and capitalize on the opportunities as they come up. Right now, the focus is on getting another game and extending this series, because I think the longer it goes, the better of chance you have to pull off this upset.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say about them going that short is that's why I think the defense felt so untenable when the Cavs were downshifted, because it was like, okay, we've got Sam Merrill at the 3, and they are playing their starters. Their starters are in. Like, that's really hard.
It wasn't like the Pritchard, Hauser, Cornet minutes that we got in Game 2, where the Cavs just kind of feasted.
Yeah, like you don't have as many. You don't have as many cheap spots, and Merrill is bad example, because I think Pritchard was in all of Merrill's minutes. But like anytime you're playing something that doesn't feel great or that you're kind of experimenting with, it's like, well, they're not experimenting. They're playing 5 guys who have 1,200 minutes together this year, and they're all really good. So
must be nice to have a single lineup out of that.
I know, wouldn't that be nice? So I just think they have. It's going to be an uphill battle, which is this was a big counterpunch game for Boston. I do think there's stuff on tape that the Cavs can do and work on. But yeah, I gotta say, I just think I'd rather go big wherever I can. If Mobley is not on the floor the rest of the series, assuming Wade is healthy, I'm probably pairing Wade with Tristan and just saying, I'm not going to be small no matter what. And I know those Wade at the 5 minutes actually went okay when Evan got hurt, But like,
Yeah.
I just don't want. I want as much toughness as the point of attack with as much size as I can muster at the rim. So I don't have to be cheating off of Derek White or Drew Holiday or Jaylen Brown on the perimeter, or allowing buku offensive rebounds or fouling them on second attempts, or these shovel passes that just give them great angles. Like I thought that was just, the Cavs were so small that that was the story of the game to me, at least on the defensive end, is like we just felt a little physically overmatched because of the personnel we had out there and because Isaac had a bad game. So hopefully Dean can play. Like, if Allen can play, I really think that changes the complexion of the series. I'm just not counting on it. But
it was nice to see video of him at least doing some work and getting his arms over his shoulders. So, man, again, it would be so nice if we were just healthy for this series. It would be great.
But of course, Boston's missing, probably their third best player. So, like, it's
excuses. I'm only looking at context when it affects the Cavs.
I know. One other thing I'll say.
Fair context for both sides is a regular season thing for me. That's not happening now.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the one thing, the other little bit of strategy, boring stuff I'll fit in here is, I think Boston found something after the first half with how they switched with Horford and how they tagged him out. This is something that I've always complimented about the Boston org for literally going back like 6 years, is how well they tag out of mismatches. Every time the Cavs got a favorable matchup with Horford, if they did get off the ball, by the time they got the ball back, Horford had switched on to a less threatening player.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a really nice job of that and I think that's part of why the Cavs offense bogged down, because I think they just got into, we just hunt out. We hunt out. We hunt out. That's all we do. We hunt out. And then all of a sudden, like that, that starts to wear you down. You're not making as many shots, and they're making you be more intentional with that, with how they were helping each other out on the back line. And
remember that used to happen sometimes with the Warriors, where they would just hunt Kevin a little too much and they would get out of their offense. Like, he'd hold his own, and it's one of those things where you want to attack someone kind of within the flow of the offense, right? Like, you want to get them in space. You don't want it to be, all right, we got to switch. We're Donovan in and out, step back, get a clean look every time, but you're exerting a lot of energy to do so, and other people aren't touching the ball, right? And that's not to fault him necessarily, but that's one of those traps you can fall in when you feel like you're consistently getting a mismatch. Yes, that is a good look, that is a good possession from time to time, but if you go too steady of a diet with that, it can impact the rhythm overall and just get you into those kind of offensive funks.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I thought the most likely outcomes coming out of this game were for me to either feel like we got these guys, we got them, we got this series in control, or Boston kind of just took back control and they renormalized the series, and I kind of
so Cavs win or Boston win.
No, let me get there, you jerk. It was like if Boston just handled us and it didn't feel like we were really competitive, then it was going to feel more like how I felt at the end of game one. But I think as far as coming out of a loss can go, I was like, I don't feel like there's a huge gulf here. I think this is still a winnable series for the Cavs. In a way, maybe even more so from just a matchup perspective. Coming out of like, we didn't play well, but we were in contact for most of the game.
Yeah.
And like, so I feel better coming off of this loss than I do coming out of the game one loss. Because I do feel like this team, I think this Cavs team feels like they can beat this Boston team. We can hang. If we play our game right, if we execute right, we can take this team, 3 more times out of the next 4.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And, that was one of the important things that we wanted to see coming into the series, right? Like the goals we wanted was win around and prove that you can hang with the best in the league. And, Boston is as tough of a test as you're going to have. So, hopefully we can get game 4 and extend the series even more. I think if the Cavs can get one more win in this series at the very least, that would feel really, really damn good. That gives you a chance to remain competitive in this series and pull off an upset, or at the very least, show, hey, we belong, even in, a depleted, injury kind of rattled state. Like, we are able to hang with the best teams in the league, and there's reasons to be optimistic about what we can be moving forward. So, obviously focus shifts to Monday. I'm sure Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is going to be loud as hell once again. Fans really showed out, and I expect the Cavs to take lessons from the film, take things from this game, and just hopefully the shooting normalizes and they're able to execute a little bit better. Winning the turnover battle is good, but I think a lot of those were unforced ones that they just simply didn't need to have. So big thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.